We're good. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the August meeting of the Brentwood Rotary Club. My name is Drew Rogers, and I have the privilege to serve as president of this club for this year. All of our members and our guests, we're glad that you're here. We've got a great program for you and a full agenda, so I started a few minutes early. I will start by calling George Barrett to the front to deliver our invocation, and then Dick Bowers will deliver our pledge and four-way test. So, George.
Good afternoon. I'm here in a very special time because last Friday, as I was leaving this meeting to go home, I was involved in an automobile accident that left my car totaled. Luckily, you're looking at the only injury that I experienced, and now I'm smiling because unbelievably, that's it. And I was thanking God because the accident was that severe with my car, but not with me. And so I know there's a reason for me being here today. And it was the email that I got on Wednesday to do this very job. And I am so thankful to Mr. Carden for asking me to do this. He didn't know that this had happened to me. And I am so happy that I can share this experience with you to let you know that I guarantee there's a God up there, and that's the reason I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now will you repeat the four-way test with me? First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right. Can you hear me? Is the microphone hot? Okay. Excellent. Everyone, do I just need to, in the Catholic Church, we just start saying the sign of the cross, and that's what gets everybody to stop talking. But I won't go there because I don't want to imply that you all would follow the same. But welcome, everybody. George, thank you for that story. It is a profound reminder of grace, and we are glad that you're here, and we were glad that you're able to deliver our invocation. I'm going to go to Jennifer Bourne to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians.
Hey. All right, George first. So glad that you're okay. I didn't hear about that. So glad to see you, but glad you brought your guest back.
Today, we're glad to have Tim Elder with us. This is the third time he's here, and I'm so very happy to be here because he's the one who got me here today. And besides that, he's a neighbor of my son, and he is a wonderful gentleman.
All right, and we hope a prospective member. We have two other guests today that I want to take the time to introduce again. They are both in the membership process. Where's Bob at? Oh, there you are. You're both at the front table. All right, Bob Thompson, he is a proposer from Linus, and he is in the application process. And Owen Zadinsky, did I say it right? I don't. All right, I'll get it. He is also in the application process, and Jack is his proposer. So thank you both for coming, and keep coming.
We also have a visiting Rotarian that I want to make sure that we recognize because she's one of Nashville's finest, Deb Varallo, member of the
Koch is the speaker and I'm his guest to be here today. So thank you. I've been wanting to get here for years and years and years. And then Drew, I found out he's president. It didn't keep me away. And so I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
You told me that you were coming because you wanted to see me. Well, okay. Thank you to our guests and Deb for being here to join us, and thank you for bringing Dean Koch here to speak to us this afternoon. We do have announcements, and I want to get to those in a second. Before I do that, we remember that we are celebrating our 50th year, and so I do have a fun fact for what happened on this day 50 years ago. And this is, I kind of had to stretch for this one, so my apologies. It is another baseball event, so whatever. But on this day, 50 years ago, which happened to be the year that we were formed as a club, New York Yankees pitcher Lindy McDaniel, if anybody remembers who Lindy McDaniel is, then you get a prize, put in one of the best relief stints in Major League Baseball history. He entered in the second inning of a game and only allowed one run in 13 innings of work from the second inning through the 15th. So how about that? That's notable. But I don't know that it's as notable as us being formed 50 years ago. So congratulations to our club for our 50th year in existence. I have a couple of announcements relative to Paul Harris Fellows. Is Michael Kaplan here? I saw him. He's going to be doing Happy Bucks. Michael, please join me up front. We've had some Paul Harris Fellow recognition here over the past few weeks, and we continue. And as you know, that you get different levels of recognition for the number of points or the amount of money that you contribute. And that starts with Paul Harris Fellow and then +1, +2, +3. And so we are recognizing Michael Kaplan with a Paul Harris Fellow +5 pin. So Michael. I did not see Sarah Johnson here, so I'm going to put those down. She's on Zoom. Okay. Well, Sarah, we have the Paul Harris Fellow certificates for your relatives, Daniel Fisher Bird and Susan Michelle Bird. And so I look forward to being able to give those to you at an upcoming meeting. So hello. Chief Brian Goss, will you have an announcement to make about the upcoming Williamson County Battle of the Badges?
Thank you. We are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the club, but we also celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Battle of the Badges blood drive. And that is when fire department and law enforcement, I don't see Chief Colvin here, and that's really sad for him. Yet, and as many of you know or may not know, there's a little bit of a friendly rivalry between fire and the police department. We started this 10 years ago with the Williamson County Sheriff's Department. And this year we're bringing Franklin Fire Department into it as well. We do all sorts of different little competitive things with our law enforcement brothers and sisters through the year. And they tend to beat us at most of them, golf or softball. So it's obvious to me that they're a bunch of cheaters. But one thing we've succeeded at through the years is bleeding better than they do. So the fire department has consistently won the Battle of the Badges, but in truth, it's the citizens of Williamson County who are the winners through this project or process. So Franklin Fire is joining us this year for the first time. They had a captain, Scott Maynard, doing a ladder drill, fell from a second-story window, broke his pelvis in 8 places, several internal injuries. He's actually back on light duty at this point, trying to work his way back to regular duty. But he was a recipient as blood products, as well as my former deputy chief and current fire chief in Nolensville, David Windrow, and retired deputy police chief, Tommy Walsh. So for those interested, there's some pamphlets on your table. You can scan that QR code into your phone. If you have flip phones, take the paper with you. But that can take you directly to sign up for a time slot. It's going to be at, if you live in Franklin or that direction, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at City Hall next Monday, August 7th. And in Brentwood at the library from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. both days, August 16th and 17th. So thanks for your support and donate in the name of the fire department. And there's nobody here that can contradict that. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Assistant Chief Colvin will have an opportunity to present next week to make an announcement. So you did a really nice job of keeping that between the lines. because he's going to have a chance to rebut that. So, Lennis Sugis, you have an announcement to make about upcoming youth exchange.
Thank you, Drew. Some of you may be aware, our club is in the middle of sponsoring a short-term youth exchange with a local Brentwood high school student. She is currently in Japan and will be returning home on Saturday with her exchange sister. She and her exchange sister will be doing some fun stuff locally for about 4 weeks while the Japanese student is here in the United States. It's a program that our club is proud to sponsor. One of the things that we'd like to do is we'd like to have a few club members meet the exchange student as well as the host student and the host family. And what we thought we'd do is we'd go to a ball game a week from Wednesday. That's 12 days from now, a week from Wednesday, a Sounds game. I'd love it if we can get a few club members to make it a point to be at the game that evening and help host the student, help show support for this great exchange program, this one between Brentwood and Japan. So put it on your calendar. If you have an interest, please see me after the meeting. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lennis. You all will notice that Larry Kane is not here today. He mentioned last week that he would give last week off, so he was going to be making an announcement today. Unfortunately, I think the caregiver for Sue was unable to be there, so he needed to stay home and do what he needed to do to support his wife. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that we are just over a month away from the golf tournament, and there's still plenty of work to be done. And I would just implore you to not leave it all to Larry. He does an amazing job of putting this golf tournament on and raising money for the Brentwood Rotary Club Charitable Foundation. He's incredibly organized and motivated. And I ask that you get out there and support him this week by going out and getting sponsorships and making sure that this golf tournament is a success. Susie?
Thanks. There's a meal train that Sana set up. So if you want to be able to take a meal to Larry and his wife, that'd be very helpful. I think they're doing it 2 nights a week. I know one night's Friday night, and I forget what the other night was. Tuesday. Okay. But if you can sign up to take them a meal, I think they would be very appreciated.
So those signups are Tuesday and Friday night. And I know that we had signed up for one. So please, if you've gotten that, take a look at that and see what you can do to help. Lastly, Michael Kaplan, I'm going to call on you to do Happy Bucks before we get to our speaker.
Can I do an announcement?
Yes, please.
May I please?
Yeah.
So as
You
your
got
new
one?
Sergeant at Arms, I asked Drew to send out a survey to the club about participating in the pledge and the 4-way test and giving invocation. And so if you would please, there's about 46 responses to that, but we have way more club members than 46, if you'll recall. So it's a very short survey. I promise it's only 7 questions. One of them is your name. So you should know that one. Okay. So it's very quick. It'll take you 2 minutes. If you would please reply to that. It's important for how we do things. And we're thinking of having other surveys come out in short order. And Drew will tell you about that later, but that's
Great.
it.
Thank you, David. Michael, that's you.
All right, we're ready to go. Who is happy first? Devin McClendon.
So I'm happy today to kind of celebrate somebody I consider one of our own, although they aren't a past member of our club. They're a past member of the morning club. Brian mentioned them. They're one of our honorees for the blood drive. A former assistant chief of Brentwood, who is now the chief of the fire department in Nolensville, David Windrow, who is a friend of mine, was recently named Fire Chief of the Year in the state of Tennessee. An awesome accomplishment. He really, I think he took that job to really build something from the ground up, which is what he's done. And he's done a great job. And he's a Rotarian and a former Brentwood person. So cheers to Chief Windrow.
I was happy to work the polls yesterday, 6 a.m. at arrival, got home last night at 8:30, so it's a long day. But Nashville is looking for poll workers. If you want to do that, I can put you in contact with whoever you need to contact.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on this side, so I don't have to walk back and forth. Be back, Dale. Healy, Wilson Bank and Trust has money.
On the board of Wilson Bank and Trust, so that's why I said that. Yay. But I want to give a donation in Drew's name because I really do like you a lot.
Thank you.
And Dean Koch, because Drew and I are members, we're members on another board. But thank you very much, and I give my bucks to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Jason, any money?
Yeah, I think I do. I'm happy because I am headed out in about an hour to go to Louisville to Kentucky Kingdom for the weekend. Last hurrah.
Nice. Didn't know that would actually
Nice.
work. Bart?
Just to follow up on Chief Goss's announcement, if you have trouble figuring out which department you're going to support, just decide, do you have red blood or blue blood? And I think that makes it easy. I bleed different colors out of different arms, so I will support both. While we're talking about the departments, so I was very pleased to participate. I may have mentioned this before in the last month, 2 different times on a active shooter exercise with the police department and the fire department. And it's wonderful to see both those departments in action in an exercise that benefits the department as they practice for this potential event and long-term benefiting our entire community.
Thank you. Alan, do you have any money?
Anybody on this side of the room that wants to make Michael walk? over here?
Anybody?
Nope. Anybody?
Anyone? All right.
Wonderful.
I didn't make the 2,000. but-
$2,000 is in there, right? Oh, there you go. That's awesome. I'm so happy that you did that, Keely.
Better not be $1.
Just happy Michael walked back over here.
It's really weird that you wanted me to walk behind you.
Thank you, Michael. And so I will now ask Burt Bradford to come introduce our speaker.
Hello, everybody. Today, our speaker is Bill Koch, who is currently the president and dean of the Nashville School of Law. Before joining Nashville School of Law in 2014, he served on the Tennessee Supreme Court and the Tennessee Court of Appeals. During his 30-year judicial career, Dean Koch was recognized as one of the 500 leading judges in America and as the Tennessee Appellate Judge of the Year. He received the Tennessee Bar Association's Justice Frank Growalta III Outstanding Judicial Service Award and the NBA's Liberty Bell Award. Before becoming a judge, Dean Koch served as counsel to Tennessee Governor Lamar Alexander, Commissioner of Personnel, and Deputy Attorney General. He was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, but he's not Polynesian background, I understand. Dean Koch earned his BA degree from Trinity College, his JD from Vanderbilt, and his LLM from the University of Virginia. He teaches constitutional law and the Tennessee Constitutional Law at Nashville School of Law. He has also received appointments as adjunct professor at Vanderbilt School of Law and Belmont College of Law. Would you welcome Dean Koch, please?
Well, good afternoon. I'm so glad to be here. And the first thing I want to say is I compliment your AV staff. They are among the best I have seen. And with their help and assistance, the program ought to go off without a hitch, except for what I might do. Secondly, I bring you greetings also from the Downtown Rotary Club and from the Nashville School of Law. And I'm not going to be talking about our school today, although I could at some length. I've left some takeaways on your table about what we're up to here. A number of your members are alumni of our school, and we're very proud of them. And perhaps sometime you can have me back to talk about what NSL is doing. But my purpose here today really is to take you back 44 years and tell you a story. Now, a number of you weren't in Tennessee 44 years ago. A number of you probably were not out of kindergarten 44 years ago. So some of this story, some of you may vaguely remember, some of you will be hearing it for the first time. And I'm going to go through it very quickly because number one, I understand the significance of 1 o'clock. And number two, I want to leave some time for questions. Now, this story is going to feature men and women, some of whose names you'll know and be familiar, some of whose names you may not, because they've been lost in the passage of time. But they're all very important players in a story that might have some relevance in the days and times that we're living in now. This will not be a partisan speech. This is actually a story about people putting politics aside and doing what needed to be done. So in telling this story, I do not mean to say derogatory things about anyone. I'm going to essentially try to tell you the truth as best I know it because I was a participant in the story I'm about to tell you. Now, assuming I'm holding this in the right way, we'll start here. The story begins with Ray Blanton, and Ray Blanton was elected governor in 1974. His opponent in the 1974 election was a young lawyer named Lamar Alexander. Lamar Alexander had just finished a stint in the Nixon White House. Nixon, of course, had his own set of problems, which did not help Alexander's race for governor, and Governor Blanton beat him quite handily. Lamar went back to begin practicing law quietly, and the governor took office. In the course of 4 years, 5 major scandals rocked the Blanton administration. And I'm going to talk about each one real quickly, but one is the Marie Regenty firing. None of you would necessarily remember Marie Regenty. Second was the sale of liquor licenses in Nashville. Third was a mess started or circling a gentleman named Roger Humphreys. Fourth was the federal clemency for cash investigation. And then fifth was an event that occurred on January 15th, 1979, when Governor Blanton, in a late night session in the legislature, issued 52 pardons that set Tennessee ablaze when all that happened. Now, involved in 3 of 5 of these scandals was a lawyer named Eddie Sisk. Eddie Sisk was a good lawyer, a scratch golfer, and a lot of people figured that he was the president of the UT Alumni Association, and everybody figured Eddie was on his way to being governor himself one day. He was serving as Governor Blanton's counsel. He was bright, personable, ambitious, but his problems began in October of 1979 when the FBI raided his office and the Department of Corrections records and picked up 165 inmate files in an investigation. Of course, the media covered that. Governor Blanton blamed the Republican U.S. attorney and the media for creating a fake news story. Governor Blanton said there was nothing going on. So that's problem number one. The second scandal involved the firing of Marie Regenty. Marie Regenty was the extradition officer in the governor's office. She was a recent graduate from Vanderbilt undergraduate school. Eddie had hired her for 2 reasons. One, she was good looking, and 2, he thought that she would, if he said jump, she would simply ask how high. He was right about one of those things, wrong about one of those things. And what happened was that after it became clear to Eddie that Marie was not going to do some of the things that he wanted her to do, Eddie and the governor decided they needed to fire Marie. She was not covered by civil service, so she could be terminated without a lot of formal hearings, and so she was fired. Marie hired a young lawyer practicing in Nashville, originally from Lawrenceburg. You might recognize his face on the screen, a guy by the name of Fred Thompson. And she sued the state to get back pay, reinstatement, and damages. I'm familiar with that because I represented the state. And we lost. We lost big time. No matter what type of damages she sought, she got. And so that story ended up getting the public's attention, and a novelist, the author of Serpico, a guy by the name of Peter Moss, wrote a book about this called Marie, A True Story. Now, for those of us that were there and read the book, the title ought to be Marie, An Almost True Story. But, there's dramatic license, and there's a lot of dramatic license in the book. Well, the book was popular enough that Dino De Laurentiis, who was a film producer that had studios in North Carolina, picked up the book, did a movie out of it starring Sissy Spacek. And that movie eventually came out. And in case you're wondering, Marie was played by Sissy Spacek. Losing my place. Jeff Daniels played Eddie Sisk. Morgan Freeman played Charles Chauger, the head of the parole board, and Fred Thompson played himself. Now, it's a hurtful thing for me to say that because Fred and I answered a casting call to be in this movie. The camera loved Fred, hated me. And so I was played by an actor named John Cullum, who later starred on Northern Exposure. So, but this sent Fred off into a whole different universe. The next scandal was the sale of liquor licenses in Nashville. And for some of you that have been around a while, you'll remember that it used to be that you could only operate a liquor store only in the confines of the old city of Nashville. So Belmead was no liquor store, Green Hills was no liquor store. But again, in a lawsuit that I tried years ago, we broke that barrier by saying it was illegal to have that geographic limitation. And basically, when the Supreme Court said that could not be enforced, it was a gold rush to open liquor stores in the suburbs. And several members of Blanton's family and team saw this as a way to make a lot of money, because basically who got those licenses were in the discretion of the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, which Blanton had appointed. They started selling liquor licenses, and that to the highest bidder. And eventually, I think the 7 lucky folks got the first licenses, and it was basically a license to print money. The FBI started investigating that as well. I mentioned Roger Humphreys. This is another scandal. Roger Humphreys was the son of Governor Blanton's patronage chief in Johnson City. He was unremarkable except for one small thing. He had been convicted of murdering 2 people, his former wife and her boyfriend, and he murdered them by hiding in the attic of their former house where they were living over their bedroom. When they were asleep, he took up one of the ceiling tiles and shot them 18 times with a 2-shot Derringer. In other words, he had to reload 9 times. It didn't take the jury long to convict him of murder. And he was sentenced to 60 years in the penitentiary. So as far as everybody knew, Roger was now doing his time out at the prison. What we did know is that as soon as Roger hit town, Governor Blanton ordered that he be given trustee status. He was given a car and was employed as the quote state photographer. So this little deal was not uncovered until one day, Speaker McWhorter, then the Speaker of the House, was being interviewed by a member of the media who was born and raised in Johnson City. And They were having a discussion in his office. The secretary came in and said, "Mr. Speaker, would you mind? We need to get a photo with you by the state photographer." So the state photographer came in, Roger Humphreys. Well, as you can imagine, the eyes of the reporter got about this big. And when he left, he says, "Speaker, do you have any idea who that guy is?" And McWhorter said, "No, I have no idea who he is." He said, "Well, that guy killed his wife and her boyfriend and is supposed to be doing 60 years at the penitentiary." And that broke open the secret about Roger Humphreys. And it got so much attention that the Tennessee General Assembly actually held hearings about what was going on with Roger Humphreys. And here's Roger Humphreys testifying before a legislative committee about what's going on. The gentleman to his left that looks like he has indigestion is his lawyer, who is not too happy that Roger is testifying in public about all this. Out of all those hearings came a rare joint resolution passed by both chambers saying, "Please do not pardon Roger Humphreys," because the governor had said, "Well, this was just a crime of passion. He's really a good guy, and I intend to pardon him." Legislature passes resolution saying, "Please don't." Well, while all this is going on, we have the U.S. Attorney's Office now gearing up an investigation into the sale of liquor licenses and pardon. The two young lawyers that head this up, you see here, Bob Lynch and Aleda Arthur. Aleda Arthur is now U.S. District Court Judge Aleda Trauger. And so the two of them and the FBI are heading up this investigation. And in December of 1978, Eddie Sisk is arrested in his office, and in his possession are a wad of marked $100 bills that had just been used to buy a prisoner's freedom in Memphis. And what had happened was that the feds had a sting operation at a Memphis motel where the bag man for Sisk and the gang met with an undercover FBI agent to get to buy somebody out of prison. And they gave him $10,000 to get this guy pardoned. It went so smoothly that the undercover agent decided to press the envelope to see how far he could get with this. So he says, "Well, I've got one other guy that needs to get out of prison, but he's pretty serious crime. He's committed armed robbery." And the lieutenant from the highway patrol that was a bagman thought a little bit. By the way, this is all videoed. Thought a little bit. And he said, "Well, that's pretty serious. It's going to cost $15,000 to get him out." And the undercover agent said, "Fine." He said, "Well, I got one more guy." He said, "I really could use your help on it." Who's that? James Earl Ray. How much it's going to cost to get him out? And the bagman thought a little bit and he says, "That's not going to be easy to do. But I think for $50,000, we can help him escape." Well, he then put the money in the bag, took it up to Nashville. Of course, they tailed him to the Capitol. He gave part of the money to Eddie, and Eddie was arrested. So this is now broken wide open. People are very upset about this. Now, we'll move off to another character. Now, some of you may or may not know Victor. Victor started in the House of Representatives. He was so young, he couldn't take office when he was first elected, and his mother sat for him until he was old enough.
I was just saying about the meeting, Rotary, how it was going. They had the speaker, there.
It's not me. So Victor ended up becoming mayor, senator, was mayor of Knoxville, and was actually U.S. ambassador to Poland for a while too. He's now living up in Knoxville. He's a lawyer, never practiced in his life. But as a member of the legislature, he had the right to ask the Attorney General's office for official AG opinions. And Victor loved to ask for opinions, and he would just dream stuff up as he was driving to and from Nashville, and would ask for opinions about off-the-wall subjects that didn't really matter much to anybody. At the time that this is going on, there were only 20 lawyers in the Attorney General's office. We had a lot of other stuff to do, So as some of you might understand is the job for answering Victor Ash's opinion request rolled downhill to the most junior lawyer on the staff. And back then there was no quality control in these opinions. So basically they would go to one of the lawyers, we'd write an opinion and we just send it out. The Attorney General would never have seen it. So we get this off the wall request from Victor Ash where he asks for no particular reason whether a governor could be sworn in before the inauguration. And at that time I was a deputy. I didn't know the opinion was in the office. The AG didn't know the opinion was in the office, but our junior lawyer wrote an opinion that very peremptorily said, well, yes, of course, the governor can be sworn in before the inauguration, as long as it's after the 15th of January, the vote's been certified, and that's all that has to happen. The inauguration is just ceremony. Well, Victor got that opinion, and what Victor did with all these opinions when he received them was he would just throw them in a drawer in his desk. He would forget about it. And so he had a desk drawer filled with hundreds of opinions. Nobody knew that that opinion had been rendered. And, here's a copy of the, going backwards, sorry. There's a copy of the opinion. You can see here it's signed by one person. The AG didn't countersign it, or the chief deputy didn't countersign it. Well, on Monday, January 15, 1979, Governor Blanton comes down to his office. He is joined by his new lawyer, Robert Lillard. Eddie's in jail and had lost his job, and Murray Henderson, the commissioner of corrections. And their job is to sign 52 clemency papers that had been set up for review and signing. And if you can imagine for a minute the assembly line, some of you may have been in the governor's office before, but we're sitting in the governor's office. We got the governor sitting at his desk. We have the commissioner of corrections sitting next to him. We have the counselor of the governor sitting on the other side, and they have an assembly line. The commissioner of correction would pick up a file, say, this is Joe Doak's clemency, we've approved it. The attorney would take it and say, this is legal. They would give it to the governor and the governor would sign it. They realized that these were not official because they had not been authenticated by the Secretary of State. So they called in Gentry Crowell, the Secretary of State, to authenticate each one of the pardon documents when they were signed. So there's a fourth person in this assembly line. Now, what many people know, some people don't know, is that Governor Blanton loved Jack Daniels. Matter of fact, he loved Jack Daniels so much that in the last year and a half of his term, if you didn't talk to him before 10 a.m., it was not worth talking to him. So here we are this evening in January, and it's about 8:30, and the governor's got a bottle of Jack on his desk. And he'd sign a few clemencies, have a swig, sign a few clemencies, have another swig. And finally, he turns to Gentry Crowell and looks at Gentry and says, this takes guts. And Crowell looked at him kind of with that look, I'll bet, I wasn't in the room, but kind of with the look you see on the screen, and says, well, Governor, some people have more guts than sense. So meanwhile, it gets out that the governor's doing something in his office. People don't know what it is. And the Capitol Hill Press Corps assembles outside the Capitol. They're not allowed in. They're on the steps of the Capitol waiting to see what is going on. And when when Blanton exits the Capitol, the press says, did you sign pardons? And he says, yes, I did. And the press said, can we see them? And he says, no, you can't. And he said, and by the way, there's going to be more coming. And then he drove away into the night. Crowell at that point had made copies of all the 52 clemency documents, and he turned them over to the press. And of course, the technical term for what happened next was all hell broke loose. Roger Humphreys was on the top of the stack. And they had made arrangements as soon as Blanton signed Humphreys' clemency. They hand carried it out to the prison. Humphreys had already been checked out of his cell, had his bag, and within 10 minutes disappeared into the night. Now, many of us have spent years trying to track down Roger again. He was actually quietly living in Brentwood, but we didn't catch up with him until we saw the obituary. So we never had a chance to ask Roger about all this, but Roger got gone. But of course, after that happened, and there's Roger's clemency. But what happened then, of course, was we have this parade of serious criminals walking out of prison. They're waving clemency. We got these clemency papers, you got to let us out. And that was getting people very, very upset. And so at that point, Victor Ashe remembers, I got this opinion about this swearing in of the governor. So that idea surfaces. And the media asks now the governor-elect, Lamar Alexander, would you consider getting sworn in early? And the governor's answer was essentially, hell no. We don't do things like that in this country. We believe in the orderly transfer of power. And I don't care what that opinion says. I don't think that's a good idea. Right? So we left it there. That brings us to this is on Monday night. On Tuesday, Governor Bill Leach, that you see here from Santa Fe, Tennessee. Governor Leach and I are up in Washington, D.C. The governor is the general is getting ready to argue a case, Rose versus Mitchell, in front of the United States Supreme Court. We're up there Monday night focusing on getting ready for this argument on Tuesday, when we get this call from the chief deputy saying, you'll never guess what's going on up here. And you can imagine sitting on 2 double beds in a hotel room with a phone, and the attorney general saying, what? The governor did what? And then the chief deputy says, well, there's an opinion, attorney general's opinion says the governor can get sworn in early. And the attorney general says, what? Who wrote that? I'm not sure that's right. We need to retract that opinion right now. So we sit there on the phone and dictate another opinion. And that opinion got issued. Here's a copy of it. You see, now this one is countersigned by the governor and the chief deputy, but it did what good lawyers do. What that opinion says is, can the governor get sworn in early? Well, maybe he can, maybe he can't. So that's where that flag got planted. We had a two-handed opinion. So we now, in addition to that, Leach has got a full plate. His wife is in labor at Baptist Hospital with her son. He has rented a hotel room across the street from what is now the Frist Arts Center in what used to be the downtown Sheraton, where he's going to stay there while his wife's in labor and his son's being born. So we get back to Nashville, and Leach has now got to pick up the pieces of what's going on. So we'll move on. Enter another player, Hal Hart. Hal is practicing law today. Hal, at the time, was the U.S. attorney when these events transpired. He too was a rising star in the Democratic Party. He had been John J. Hooker's driver and helper for several campaigns. Governor Blanton had appointed him to be a trial court judge in Nashville. This is a picture of Hal sitting at Blanton's desk signing his oath. And Blanton assumed that with Hardin over in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the things were going to be much more hands-off than they had been. Blanton was wrong. What Hardin told the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office was full speed ahead. Complete this investigation. Let's see what's happening. And by Wednesday of this week, Hardin had information that the governor's office was getting ready to issue more pardons from people who the FBI believed had bought their way out of prison. So Hardin picks up the phone and calls Lamar Alexander. Lamar's at his office in Green Hills, his transition office, and Hardin identifies himself. They knew each other not well, and told Alexander what was going on. and said, you need to consider getting sworn in early. Alexander says, I'm going to have to call you back. He did that for two reasons. One is that he thought that this is one of his friends playing a joke on him. He was attributing it to Lou Connor. Some of you may know Lou Connor. And he was figuring that Lou was doing this. Number two is he was figuring, if this is true, I need to think about what I'm doing. So after he authenticates the fact that it's Hal, he calls him back and basically says, I'm not moving one step forward until you relay this same information to the lieutenant governor and speaker. So Hardin calls John Wilder and Ned McWhirter and explains the problem, the situation that they have. What they say is, we're not doing a thing until the attorney general tells us that it's legal to do it. And so that information gets back to Hardin. Hardin calls Bill Leach and says, you're going to have to plant your flag one way or the other here, because nobody's going to do anything unless you tell them it's legal. So Leach and Hardin arranged for a secret meeting in Leach's hotel room at the Sheraton. And the chief deputy, Hayes Cooney, and I are instructed to take a circuitous route and sneak over there and get in this meeting. And for 3 hours, we argued and yelled and smoked and had a lot of terse words about whether it was legal or not. It was finally concluded, the consensus was that the governor, in fact, could be sworn in before inauguration, which was that coming Saturday. And so that the attorney general communicated that information to the two speakers and to Alexander. The speaker's response was, well, we will support Governor Alexander if he takes the oath. Alexander's reply is, I'm not going to take the oath unless you people are standing right next to me. You know, we need to demonstrate that this is not some sort of coup. We were not allowed to use that word until about 20 years ago. We're just not going to do it unless you're there. So McWhirter and Wilder agreed to be there. And then there's also a decision. We're going to have the three constitutional officers there, the speaker, the secretary of state, and the comptroller are all going to be there. And then the decision is we're going to do it in the Supreme Court building in Nashville. And so we need to get, if he would, the Chief Justice of the Tennessee Supreme Court to administer the oath. Well, Chief Justice Henry was recovering from a little bout of heart problems in his motel room that was on James Robertson Parkway. And Cooney and I have to go over to talk him into doing this. And Henry's first reaction is, I'm not going to do that. And so we basically say, well, if you don't, somebody else is going to. And Joe Henry says, well, I guess I'll do it. So he decided he would swear him in. He did not discuss this with his four other colleagues. They didn't know about it until after all this happened. So now all the group, the people are together. We're all in the Supreme Court building. We're getting ready to do this. All the players are meeting in the robing room next to the Supreme Court chamber. And somebody says, you know, they arrange who's going to walk first, who's going to say what. It's all choreographed. And they're starting to walk out and somebody says, do you think we ought to tell the governor? And we're looking at each other because at this point we had decided nobody knew what was going on. The press didn't know what was going on. They knew something was happening. They didn't know what. We were worried that if the governor found out, he would call out the highway patrol or the National Guard. So finally, the decision is we're going to let the governor know. And then the question is, well, who's going to call him and tell him? And they all decide that the best person to do it is Ned Ray McWhirter. He was as close to Blanton as anybody there from West Tennessee and had political stuff before. So McWhirter turns to his staffer, says, do you have Blanton's number? Yes. This is before cell phones. We had a rotary dial phone. And they dial the number. Blanton has moved out of the residence and is now at his new house. They dial the number, sitting there holding the phone, and Blanton's wife answers the phone. And McWhirter says, Betty, this is Ned Ray McWhirter, is the governor free. And she said, well, hold on a minute. And you could hear this coming through the receiver on the phone. And 30 seconds later, the governor comes on and says hello. And McWhirter says, Governor, this is Ned Ray McWhirter. Bill Leach has something to tell you. And hands the phone to Bill Leach, who basically gave the governor the news. Now, what you're about to see is a video of the swearing in occurring live. It was the first night that Channel 5 could broadcast remotely from the studio. They were trying out their truck for the first time. And here's the news.
Right now, he's got his family with him. In just a moment, Jeff, it looks like we're going to be witnessing the swearing in of the 45th governor of Tennessee. The Senate is directly behind Mr. Alexander. Ned Ray McWhirter is directly behind him. The Attorney General is following. And Gentry Crowell is right behind them. We're expecting him to be sworn in right now. We are live at the Tennessee State Supreme Court.
I've been authorized by the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House to make this statement on behalf of the three of us. The United States Attorney for the Middle District of Tennessee has informed each of us today that he has substantial reason to believe that Governor Blanton is about to release one or more persons from prison who are targets of the United States investigation into alleged payoffs for pardons and commutations of sentences. That information, taken with other information of the last several weeks, causes each of us to believe that it is in the best interest of the people of Tennessee for the governor-elect to assume that office immediately. We believe that the taking of the oath should be done publicly and with each of us present. The State Attorney General has assured each of us that in his opinion, the assumption of the office in these circumstances is constitutionally valid. These are not very happy days for Tennessee. It's not a happy day for me. I believe, though, that we have been responsible and that we have kept the faith of the people by this decision. We seek the people's wisdom and we hear the people's wisdom. Our days of agony can soon go forward to days of pride. I ask for the prayers of the people. Mr. Chief Justice, I am ready to take the oath of office.
Please place your left hand upon the Bible. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Lamar Alexander.
I, Lamar Alexander,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will perform with fidelity
that I will perform with fidelity
the duties of the office of governor
the duties of the office of governor
of the state of Tennessee,
of the state of Tennessee,
to which I have been elected
to which I have been elected
and which I am about to assume.
and which I am about to assume.
I will support the Constitution
That I will support the Constitution
of the state of Tennessee
of the state of Tennessee
and the Constitution of the United States.
and the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Now, in interest, and I'm going to skip through some of this, and I want to get to the point of the story. The media congratulated all the parties for taking this step. It was a big political risk. It was a big legal risk for everyone that did it, but it was very well received. They broke into CBS News. Walter Cronkite had it that night. It was a national story. Lamar still has that cartoon from the banner hanging in his office up in Maryville. He went ahead and had his second inauguration on Saturday. But the story of it is this: at the end of that swearing in, Hank Allison, who was filming all that for Channel 5, asked various participants about what they thought had just happened. And I'm going to play you the last interview he did with Ned Ray McWhirter.
Chris, one of the things that has not been brought up, and I don't wish to be indiscreet, Mr. Speaker, but you are of the other party, and the man who was just sworn in as governor, the man whose ouster as governor was felt needed by you and by other members of your party, is of your own party. Could you comment on this?
Yes, as Governor Alexander said a few minutes ago, at noon today, after consulting with our Attorney General, our legal counsel for the state of Tennessee, and the information that had been made available to me, like Governor-elect Alexander and Lieutenant Governor Wilder, I felt it appropriate and under the circumstances that Governor Alexander take the oath. And I might point out that Governor Blanton's term could expire on January 15th. And that I thought it would be in the best interest of the citizens of our state and of Tennessee that Governor Alexander take the oath, and I support the governor in taking the oath.
Okay. A good answer, but you really finessed my question. Do you care to address that at this point?
Repeat your question.
Okay, my question being that the man you just swore in is a Republican. You are a Democrat, and most of the people who participated in the decision to swear him in early are Democrats.
First, I'm a Tennessean, and I think this is in the interest of Tennessee, regardless of the party.
That's the lesson of the story. If you want to read more about it, Vanderbilt Press did eventually publish a book. Lamar allowed it to be called Coup. You can find it on the internet. It's a pretty good story. If you want to know the rest of the story, read that. And thank you so much. I'm about 3 minutes over, and I apologize.
Dean Koch, that's a fascinating story. And so thank you for taking the time to tell it the way that it needs to be told. And so hopefully you'll be able to stick around. If anybody has any questions, I would like to come talk to you. I would encourage you to come up and speak with Dean Koch about that. And we hope to have you back sometime soon to talk about the Nashville School of Law. So thank you for being here. We typically have a book that we would like for you to sign. Now, I promise you, and you're the third speaker that I've explained this to, pins have been ordered, which is a gift that we would present to you so you could remember your time with us. Supply chain issues, I don't know. They've been ordered, they haven't made it. But we will present you with a pin as a gift from our club to remember your time here. And I'm sorry that I'm not able to give that to you today, but thank you for being here. I would like to re-welcome our guests. Deb, thank you for being here. Bob, Owen, thank you for being here. We look forward to seeing you more frequently here. Please put away tables and chairs. We're stacking in stacks of 8 by the tables, correct? And so if you can stick around to help clean up, that would be wonderful. If there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, then we are adjourned. Yeah.